Hello and welcome to Bond Jam with me, Simon Jeffrey, and I'm joined by the Penelope Smallbone to my Miss Moneypenny. It's Mr. James Turner.
Hi Simon, that's not a very nice comment to say compared to Smallbone to Miss Moneypenny.
Let's hold that conversation off for a moment, but yes, today we are back once again doing a tier list. This time it's of the MI6 Staff tier list from the James Bond series. Now, we had a few rules, a few criteria for who made the list and who didn't. So, James, why don't you remind me of what they were?
So basically, it's the MI6 staff, so people who work within MI6. It doesn't include agents, so maybe foreign agents or agents that work for MI6 but are in the field. This kind of mainly looks at those who work behind the scenes in MI6 and who help out MI6.
Yeah, I think the general rule is no fellow agents or foreign contacts. There are a few external allies there, but they all conduct at least some of their business within the actual building of MI6 or one of the buildings of MI6.
Yes.
So that's generally the rule. They're not all officially employees of the same organization, but they do at least work or advise within that building or one of the many alternate safe houses or whatever.
Yeah.
I think we sort of drew the line at characters in the background who didn't have names or lines, because that might be an endless list of unnamed desk clerk number 4. So this is really just the ones we could think of, the main ones, the ones with lines at least. But if we missed any, which I'm sure we did, do let us know and we'll pop them in later.
Yeah.
In the interest of transparency, this is the second attempt at recording this. We spoke at length a few days ago for over an hour and I didn't record it.
2 times the charm.
Okay, so first up on the list of MI6 staff is the big boss himself, M, as played by Bernard Lee.
The classic M, yep. The definitive M.
The definitive M. I don't think there's really anywhere else for him, is there?
He has to go to the top, doesn't he?
He has to go at the top in Nobody Does It Better. That's our top tier. I think we could say all the reasons why, but at the end of it, we'd still end up with the same conclusion. He's just the right balance of authority, warmth, and, coldness when he needs to.
He can switch between those sides in his personality, but you get to see both of those sides within his tenure as M.
Off to a strong start. Next up, we have Major Boothroyd, or Q if you prefer. He's never addressed as such in the film, but one can only assume he's given the same title as his successors. This is Q as played by Peter Burton in Dr. No. His only appearance. I think he wasn't available to reprise it, so Desmond Llewellyn was cast from Russia with Love and went on to play him for the next almost 40 years.
It's one of those roles where if he did reprise his role in From Russia with Love, would we have seen his character be expanded upon in the way that Desmond Llewellyn's character did? So if he was given the opportunity to continue with that role, would he be higher up in my estimation of his character?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you say that. If you remember Desmond Llewellyn's first role as Q in From Russia with Love and compare that scene to Peter Burton's scene in Dr. No, they're really quite similar. It would be difficult to argue that either one of them brings more to the role than the other in their one first outing. So like you say, it is a bit of a big what if he had continued. Would he have gone on to be the well-loved character that Desmond Llewellyn's Q is? But we do have to judge it on what we have, and what we have is a relatively underutilized, undeveloped character, perfectly serviceable, with 1 or 2 good lines, but really quite forgettable in the grander scheme of things.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to put him in bang average.
Yeah, that's where I'd put him as well, so let's whack him in there.
There you go, Peter. Next up we have Lois Maxwell as Moneypenny. The definitive Moneypenny, I think you're about to say.
Nobody does it better again.
There's nothing you can say about Lois Maxwell other than to put her right up there. I enjoy pretty much any scene she's in.
Yep.
And she's charming. She's just the right level of, warmth and care for Bond without being too pathetic, and she calls him out, and you get a sense that the repartee is definitely mutual. It's not a kind of one using the other.
Yeah.
You know, they are both fully aware of their situation and their relationship, and they're both fine with it, and it's quite charming. Particularly like the early scenes with Sean Connery, especially, were really sweet. They had real chemistry, and Roger Moore as well just had his own, you know, unique, really sweet friendship with her. There's nowhere else for her. She's nobody does it better.
Agreed.
I sense those two might be getting some company just about now, because next up we have Desmond Llewellyn as Q.
The definitive Q.
The definitive Q. Yep. I mean, let's not beat about the bush. Up he goes. Yep. But I'd even be tempted to say, you know, if we were to put them in some kind of order.
Yeah, definitely.
Q is, I mean, like I said with Lois Maxwell as Moneypenny, I enjoy all of her scenes, but even more so with Desmond Llewellyn as Q. And I remember you said, like, you used to look forward to those scenes, especially as a kid. And I think all of us who grew up with Bond, like the Q scenes especially, were just a little exciting comedy moment sometimes. Yeah. And you just knew you were in for a treat whenever he came on.
Absolutely. And I think sometimes you kind of want to see more of him. He's been in so many films, but there's many films where he's in just one scene only. And you kind of wish that he was in more. And the times where you do get to see him more, in, for example, License to Kill, or even Octopussy when he comes in the hot air balloon, you know, it always makes you smile when he's on, when he has a bit more of screen time. Yeah,
and he has a great relationship with each of the actors who played Bond. He has a unique kind of chemistry with each of them, I think. Roger's Bond is teasing him a lot and making life difficult for him a lot, but it's whoever he's up against, he's had chemistry with every single one of the Bond actors, and he is quite possibly the best member of MI6 staff in the whole history
ever
of the Bond series. Next up, we have the first appearance of Bill Tanner, as played by Michael Goodliffe in The Man with the Golden Gun. Now, I had to look up whether this even was Tanner. I
always knew that Tanner was in The Man with the Golden Gun, but I could never recall what role he played in the film. So even now, looking at the image that we've got of him there, I still can't even picture what he says in the film. It's that forgettable.
I can't call to mind a single line of his. I think it is a case of probably the screenwriter going back to the books and saying, you know, let's find a character from the novels that we haven't seen yet, and just giving the name Tanner to a fairly arbitrary advisor within the scenes. There's no sense of chemistry or history between either Tanner and M or Tanner and Bond. Now, I don't know the relationship in the books well enough to know whether Tanner and Bond have that friendship that we see later in the film versions, but there's nothing here at all. I'd be tempted to say, just purely based on the fact I can not tell you a single thing he says, that I might put him in the bottom.
Yeah, let's go for it. It's either barely bearable or positively shocking, but let's put him in positively shocking. We can always move him after.
Next up, we have Colthorpe from The Man with the Golden Gun.
Same with Tanner from The Man with the Golden Gun. Someone who barely makes any presence in the film. He's a nothing character to me.
Having put Tanner down the bottom there, I'm reminded that previously I've reserved this area here for characters that kind of leave me feeling a little, you know, perturbed or upset or annoyed or irritated. He doesn't do that any more than Colthorpe does. Mm-hmm. So maybe they both belong in Barely Bearable. I certainly think he does, and maybe if we put them side by side, look, it looks like one picture there. They look like they belong together anyway.
For a ballistics expert for MI6, there could have been more done with the character.
I think that he's such a stuffy, boring, dated-looking character. You know, could have been anyone, sure, but his role is, like you say, a ballistics expert. Maybe they could have made that role, you know, in a slightly different flavour, not just another suit and a moustache, you know, but maybe a kind of more military-looking guy. He could well have been. He could have been, you know, retired major or something. But yeah, they belong together, I'm sure. Next up, we have Frederick Grey, Minister of Defence, appearing in a couple of films, starting from The Spy Who Loved Me, up until, I think, The Living Daylights.
Yeah, that's right. I used to always get him confused with being M. He plays that significant of a role in the films to me. When I was younger, I always used to think, especially when Robert Brown was M, he was the one I always thought was the more authority figure in terms of giving Bond his mission.
Yeah.
So he does play a massive role in those films.
Yeah, I think my childhood memories of watching that era of Bond films from the sort of mid to late Roger Moore tenure kind of are really happy memories of rewatching those films, and I always enjoy that Frederick Gray was there as a bit of a glimpse into the wider world of this universe, giving a sense that M reports to someone. He works for the government, and therefore politicians are involved, like Frederick Gray. So I always enjoyed when he was on screen, and I think he's got a fun part that he always finds a way to do something memorable in the scenes he's in. I mean, based on For Your Eyes Only alone, I'm tempted to put him up in great. Okay, next we have General Gogol from The Spy Who Loved Me, right up until The Living Daylights, like Frederick Gray as well.
Yeah, I mean, we did debate whether we should even include General Gogol, but I think because him and Frederick Gray come as a pair almost.
Yes.
And he has so many connections to Bond's missions, especially within MI6. I think he deserves to be on this list.
I think he is as synonymous with those films as Frederick Gray is, and for the same reasons, I think. And also, I think it adds that nice kind of Cold War flavour of this constant rivalry, this kind of ongoing, reluctant allies, suspicious friends kind of thing going on, which was, true to life in that time when the Cold War was still happening. And I think he belongs in the same place that Frederick Gray does, really.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up we have the second appearance of Tanner, as played by James Villiers in For Your Eyes Only.
This is our second time we've seen the character of Tanner. I've got to say he's miles better than the Man with the Golden Gun iteration. He's more memorable, but obviously I don't think he makes the same impression, and he doesn't have the same warmth as Michael Kitchen or Rory Kinnear have in the later versions of Tanner that we see.
No, I think he'd be hard-pressed to do a less memorable version than the previous one we got, and he is promoted to a more authoritative position. This is obviously the first film without Bernard Lee as M following his death, so they, I think, did the right thing in not immediately recasting him and giving it just a little pause before recasting the role, just out of respect, if nothing else. He's believably, authoritative in the role, but
sometimes grumpy, I find, as well.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. Like I say, I don't know enough about how Tanner should be from the books to know whether this is accurate to the character, but I think it's a nice different flavour for a one-off in the film. It gives it something to remember For Your Eyes Only by, and maybe it gives you a hint of like, I'm not sure whether we should trust this guy, because he's not the usual guy Bond takes his orders from, but I don't know, he's definitely above the first Tanner. I don't know if he's above the first Major Boothroyd or not. I'd say he definitely has more to do.
He's either pretty good or bang average.
Well, let's pop him next to Peter Burton for now.
Okay.
And see if he goes up from there. Next, we have Boba Fett himself, Jeremy Bulloch, as Smithers from a couple of the Roger Moore films, For Your Eyes Only and Octopussy, is that
That's
correct?
right, yeah. He's just basically a Q-Lab technician that's just given a bit more recurrence. When Roger Moore's Bond sees him, he's like, hello, Smithers.
I like that Bond acknowledges him.
Yeah,
like
that's what I really
Roger
like
says,
about it.
Smithers.
It's like they've met a few times before, and Bond's got to know them.
Smithers is probably quietly glad that he doesn't have to deal with Bond on a day-to-day basis like Q does, and so he's able to maintain a more friendly relationship with him. But I think just for the same kind of reason that Desmond Llewellyn's kind of up there is like, if he's there, it means you're in a Q scene, and that's always good, And so when you see any amount of background information or extra characters or whatever within a Q scene, I'm always a little bit excited. I'm always like, we're going to stay in this scene a little bit longer just for a little bit of antics with Smithers before we move on.
Yeah, it's like a little bonus.
It's completely superfluous to the plot, but I love it, and I wish there was more of it. I wish he was in all of Roger Moore's films for a little demonstration of a gadget before he moves on. He doesn't ultimately do all that much.
No.
But I'd still put him pretty good.
Yeah, I have great fondness for Smithers. I think you could create a lot of fan fiction around him.
It probably exists, James, but if not, you should be the first.
Yes.
Next up, we have M, the first new M of the series, as played by Robert Brown, also known, potentially, as Admiral Hargreaves.
I'd certainly like to believe so.
From The Spy Who Loved Me. I quite like the idea. It's certainly quite a widely held fan theory that is the same character as played by the same actor. The only slight spanner in the theory, perhaps, is that I think in order to become M, he would have had to take a demotion from the role that he had in the rank he had in The Spy Who Loved Me, because his later uniform in The Living Daylights is of a lower rank. It's from Vice Admiral to Rear Admiral, or the other way round, I'm not too sure, but whichever way it is, it's an interesting...
it's not impossible.
It's an interesting detail to analyse, to me and no one else. But what do you think of Robert Brown?
He's only in 4 films, which I always find astonishing. I always thought he was in more in my head. He's not the same as Bernard Lee. And no. As I mentioned earlier, that I always presumed that it was Frederick Gray that was playing the M character in a lot of those films.
Is that because Frederick Gray comes across with more authority than Robert Brown does, perhaps?
I think so. Yeah, I just feel like he seems to be the person who's more in charge than Robert.
Frederick Gray certainly has a kind of a sharpness and a sort of acerbicness that Robert Brown doesn't necessarily have, or at least not straight away.
Yeah.
I think Robert Brown actually improves with the Timothy Dalton era.
Yes, yeah.
I really like him. I know he's not Bernard Lee and he's not the definitive M, but he's a really good M. Yeah. I think it definitely works better if you do view him as a separate character, because he's never confirmed either way whether it's meant to be, Admiral Miles Messervy back again, the original M, or whether it is someone else. All other discussion about whether it's actually the same person or it's a different admiral, that all came later, but it definitely works better to view it that way.
Yeah.
And I really like it. I've got a soft spot. I think he is the M in some of my favourite Bond films. So I'm going to put him, if not in Nobody Does It Better, because clearly one person does do it better, he's definitely in Great.
Yeah, I'm happy to put him in there.
Next up, we have Fanning from Octopussy, who I don't believe works for MI6, but he is an advisor on the Fabergé egg case, who accompanies Bond to the auction and is made to panic and sweat by Roger Moore's Bond as he cheekily ups the bidding in a great scene.
The chemistry between him and Bond is what makes that scene so... the chemistry between him and Roger Moore's Bond, particularly, because I think there's a lot of back and forth between them, and he could have been essentially the same character as how Colthorpe comes across.
Yeah.
But it doesn't come across that way at all. There's some fun to be had there.
I think it almost comes across like M is irritated that he and Bond get on at all.
Yes, yeah.
And but like you say, it just kind of draws a comparison with similar advisors like we've had, Colthorpe, and just makes you realise what it could have been. It could have been this like warm character. He doesn't do a huge amount beyond like 1 or 2 scenes, but where would you think of putting him?
I really like him, and I'd put him in Great. I don't know about you, but the fact that he could have been a Colthorpe, but he doesn't do that, and that's down to... Sorry, I can't remember the actor who plays him.
Douglas Wilmer is the name you're searching for. We
Perfect.
should give the man his props, because he is going up in Great, at least for now, because his scenes make me happy. I mean, so do Smithers, though, to be honest. So
yes.
Maybe he belongs about along the same length. I don't know.
We can move him down.
We'll
after
see.
if necessary.
We'll see. Next up, we have Penelope Smallbone from Octopussy, the would-be replacement to Miss Moneypenny, who is obviously brought in to kind of prepare for her stepping into Lois Maxwell's shoes, perhaps.
Yeah, well, obviously Roger Moore. This was in Octopussy, and Roger Moore at the time had decided Octopussy would be his last film, and then they ended up going back for A View to a Kill. So they obviously decided, let's forget this Smallbone. Let's bring back Lois Maxwell and Moneypenny.
Well, that's my real issue with it, I guess. And in hindsight, the fact that they didn't bring her back makes her stick out like a sore thumb. If she was in A View to a Kill as well, maybe it would have been different. But it's such an obvious kind of attempt to upgrade to a younger model that it almost comes across a little insulting, because they're not doing it with Bond. They clearly knew at the time that Roger Moore had maybe 1 or 2 films left.
Yeah.
And he and Lois Maxwell were the same age. So just keep her on until Roger decides to leave.
Yeah.
And then just say, new Bond, new Moneypenny. We didn't need to have Lois Maxwell usurped by this younger model while Roger Moore was still, fast approaching 60 and still hanging in there. Why couldn't he just have aged at the same?
She's a nothing character.
Well, put all of that aside, exactly. Put all of the gender politics and the questionable storytelling aside. She's just pathetic. Anyway, nothing against the actress Michaela Clavel, who is, perfectly, is doing the role as it's written, I'm sure, but it's written poorly. And it just makes me think, what are you doing? You don't need to replace Lois Maxwell. She could have stayed on for For that reason, I'm going to stick her down there. She evokes more of a negative reaction in me than Colethorpe does. I barely remember Colethorpe. I remember Smallbone, and I go, first of all, Smallbone? What? What are you doing? And secondly, maybe if you'd given her a shred of character or dignity and asked her to do anything other than just sigh wistfully at this old, slightly creepy man, Next up, we have Caroline Bliss as Moneypenny in The Living Daylights and License to Kill.
I was looking at the image of Moneypenny when I was putting the image together, and I remember thinking that she's actually a good Moneypenny. She plays the role well, but she's just not given anything to do. She's not given any good material to play with.
Especially in License to Kill, she's barely in it.
It's a shame because I think she had potential to be a good Moneypenny, I think.
Yes. I think it is a little bit of symptomatic of what Moneypenny had become a little bit towards the end of Roger Moore's tenure, and certainly has vibes of that Smallbone scene where, in order to make Bond look good, you've got to have Moneypenny swoon over him, and the relationship seems much less mutual in their affection and a little bit kind of unrequited. And honestly, it's a little bit kind of dated and doesn't match the tone of the rest of Timothy Dalton's films, and it's possibly more of a hangover from Roger Moore's tenure, I think, that made its way into Timothy Dalton's. I don't honestly think he needed a Moneypenny at all. Even though she's helpful, it didn't need to be her doing it. It could have been anyone doing that sort of thing.
I'd put him pretty good.
Pretty good.
I think she deserves more than bang average.
Definitely.
But I wouldn't say great. I think pretty good is.
Let's pop her there. She might go down, but I'm kind of with you. I think I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt because I think she could have been better than what they gave her. Next up, we have M, as played by Judi Dench.
I believe there are 2 characters that Judi Dench plays. She plays the M from Pierce Brosnan's tenure, and the M from Daniel Craig's era.
Yes.
And I feel like they're 2 very different versions of M.
I agree. In fact, She has actually been given 2 different names in different places. In the novelisation to Die Another Day, I think, her name is given as Barbara Maudsley. Whereas I think maybe in Skyfall or Spectre, we see it written down as Olivia Mansfield. Now, traditionally, the M comes from an M in their name, so they've given their name there twice. And although the novelisation is not strictly canon with the film series, it backs up this argument we're making that she's 2 different characters in those 2 universes. And so I'm happy to believe that, from GoldenEye to Die Another Day, that's Barbara Maudsley as M. And from Casino Royale to Spectre, that is Olivia Mansfield as M. We could have therefore separated this out into 2 characters, but would they have been in different places for you?
Possibly. As the Daniel Craig era went on, M seems to become more of a mother figure, and I'm not sure I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
That angle.
I think they overdid it. I think they went a bit too heavy on that sort of mother metaphor, particularly in Skyfall. It's okay for a one-off, but it does seem that like Daniel Craig and Judi Dench's relationship throughout their films is very much like kind of this unspoken mother-son dynamic. Whereas, at least to begin with, in GoldenEye, Judi Dench as M was very much first and foremost the employer,
and she gets closer to Bond.
Yes,
as Brosnan's era went on, so that when you got to The World Is Not Enough, you get to see more of the caring side of it.
I think Judi Dench still belongs at the top. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. I she is a great M. It's just the mother angle that I didn't like about M.
I think she has earned her spot up there. Okay, next up we have the next appearance of Tanner, as played by Michael Kitchen in GoldenEye, and then later The World Is Not Enough. Mm-hmm. Now, to you and I, this is probably the first Tanner we were aware of. Yeah. And so it was a bit of a surprise to me when I went back and found out that there was a character called Tanner in the earlier movies, because he bore no resemblance to this fully fleshed out, quite caring character that we see.
Yeah, and I like that chemistry that he has with Brosnan, and I love the scene where he gets caught by M after he calls her the evil queen of numbers or something like that. That's, he's joking with Bond, but he gets caught out, and I love that that side that we see of him. Yeah,
they do lean quite heavily on the whole idea that M in GoldenEye is relatively new in the role, and there's a lot of uncertainty about her abilities and stuff, and so he helps to play up that and gets put in his place, and it works really nicely. Yeah. Where do you think he should go?
For me, he would go in the great category.
I agree. Let's stick him up there. I don't know if he goes there. I'm not really putting these in any particular order, so I'll leave him there for now. Next up, we have Colin Salmon as Charles Robinson in Tomorrow Never Dies, The World Is Not Enough, and Die Another Day.
Now, I really loved Robinson's character when I was young. I thought he was ace, especially with I always wanted to see him in the field with Bond in some sort of action sequence. So when I see him in the Die Another Day virtual reality scene, and you see him going down the... if he was real...
that scene was real. Absolutely.
That scene where you see him going along the corridor.
He's believable in the part as well. I mean, he's like a lean, fit, handsome figure, just like Bond.
Yeah.
And you totally buy it. And he's got a good relationship with Pierce Brosnan, I think. And, as I've said many times before about Tomorrow Never Dies and my first experience, and he's pretty much the first person who speaks on screen, I think. And, I watched it so many times and knew every line, and he's just indelible there in my childhood. But I think he's great. I think obviously he was a replacement stand-in for a Tanner type character, and maybe Michael Kitchen would have been in that role if he'd been available. Mm-hmm. But I'm glad they kept him on even when Michael Kitchen came back. I'm glad that we saw Robinson again, and I think he's great. I think he's probably... I'd put him up there somewhere.
Yeah, I would agree. Definitely in the great category.
Next up in the bunch of MI6 staff that we get introduced to in Tomorrow Never Dies is not technically an MI6 staffer. It's Admiral Roebuck, as played by Jeffrey Palmer from Tomorrow Never Dies. So I don't know why. I mean, that's a lie. I kind of do know why. I grew up watching As Time Goes By on a Sunday evening while I ate my tea, and seeing him and Judi Dench appear again together in this, it just made me smile as a kid, just going like, oh, I wonder if that's why they cast him. And I think some of that chemistry carries over. They had an established rapport, so it was like a shorthand with each other, because you buy their rivalry instantly. They're kind of attempts to outrank each other, and he's not in it for long, but he's memorable and entirely believable, I think.
Absolutely.
Where would you put him? Is Great too high up for him?
I'd possibly say it is, but then again, he probably has the same amount of chemistry than Fanning does.
Well, maybe he goes there, and maybe Fanning does too.
Okay, yeah, let's do that.
Next up, we have Samantha Bond, as Miss Moneypenny for Pierce Brosnan's tenure.
So this is a character that I feel kind of dissolves as the series went on. When we first introduced to her in GoldenEye, she's a great Moneypenny. She brings a whole new side to her character. She's much more, I think she's a stronger character in terms of Bond's flirtatious antics when it goes towards her. But she kind of succumbs to that by the time you get to Die of the Day.
Yeah, she's given increasingly little to do following her first appearance. I mean, in GoldenEye, she's matching him quip for quip and, rebutting him and actually denying they've ever had any kind of relationship or history together. And Tomorrow Never Dies, she's cheeky and informative. She's useful. The World Is Not Enough is a little bit blink and you miss it. They have a nice moment with the cigar at the beginning, and she again puts him in his place. But by the time Die Another Day comes along, she's really got nothing to do but become the butt of an awful joke at the end, and it's really sad. I think she's great. She's got an instant rapport with Pierce Brosnan in their early films, but I don't think they are allowed to explore it much as time went on. I still think she's in great though.
Yeah, I agree. I think Die of the Day you could consider just being a blip. I mean, if Brosnan did another Bond and Samantha Bond came back, they might have redeemed that.
That's the biggest blot on her record, really. I think she's probably at the bottom of great.
Yeah,
but
I'm happy to put her there.
I still think she belongs there. Next up, we have Julian Fellowes as the British Minister of Defence from Tomorrow Never Dies. He's actually a character that we forgot to include the first time we recorded this.
Yes, but we still managed to discuss him anyway, so I think it's good that we...
Yes. So I guess he's technically a replacement sort of standing character for Frederick Grey, who somehow managed to remain Minister of Defence throughout, Labour Party and Conservative Party, so I don't know how that works, and there's never a party that is mentioned as being this particular defence minister's affiliated party, but his role really is to provide M with the ultimatum of how long she's got to solve this before they go to war, basically. So it's quite functional, but he plays it with the appropriate level of authority and, very sort of well-spoken sort of sharpness to it that I always remember his delivery of certain lines, his Christ kind of. So I don't know. It's like my judgment when it comes to Tomorrow Never Dies is quite unreliable. I'm probably better off leaving this one to you because I just like everything about that film.
For me, he's on the same level as Admiral Roebuck. I think Roebuck might be slightly better, so if we put him next to Roebuck, between him and Smithers, I think that'd be a good shout. Yeah.
Okay, next up we have John Cleese as Q's assistant, and later Q himself in The World Is Not Enough and then Die Another Day, and every other tie-in piece of merchandise John Cleese could be persuaded to lend his voice to. What do you think about this, James?
To replace Desmond Llewellyn was would have been quite a feat, and it's almost impossible, you could say, to replace such a character. So I think John Cleese does a good job in trying to make some sort of replacement.
Yes.
In the same vein of Desmond Llewellyn, but brings his own sort of quirk to it as well as.
I think he is largely played for laughs in The World Is Not Enough. Obviously, kind of, playing up the sort of Monty Python type roles that he's played before. That sort of very bumbling fool. Yeah. It's difficult to believe that a person like that would even get past the interview stage for a job like that. But perhaps his genius is so immense that they would ignore his, social ineptitude. But I mean, I think that the odd thing is, I mean, it's not a controversial thing to say that Die Another Day is a worse film than The World Is Not Enough, right? We can all agree on that. But I do think that John Cleese is better in Die Another Day.
Yeah, he's finding his feet for the character there.
Yes.
So if he was to continue on, if Brosnan did another one and they brought John Cleese back, then we might have seen more of his character being developed further. All we can do is rely on the other media forms to help us with that.
I certainly think that we would have definitely seen more of him, and whether or not that would have made him go up the list, or whether or not he would have become unbearable or overused or kind of fall into, parody or whatever. But I think he's pretty good.
I'd put him in pretty good or great, but yeah, I'm happy to put him in pretty good. I'd put him very high up and pretty good though, personally.
Let's put him at the top of pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we have Dr. Molly Warmflash from The World Is Not Enough.
What a name.
Yeah, exactly. Whose job seems to be to be seduced by Bond and say something about his shoulder, I don't know. It's a bit of a throwback scene, really. It's something you'd expect to see in, like, Thunderball, rather than...
Yeah, it's the film that I think of immediately when I...
I think it is a bit of a reference to Patricia Fearing, I think, from Thunderball. But I don't think it holds up that well these days, that kind of manipulation and those kind of cheesy dialogue that Brosnan busts out in that scene. But I think you said last time, if she'd been a character in the 60s, that would be all she was given to do. That would be her sole function, would be an object of seduction. But I think
she does have an opportunity to kind of display her skills.
Yeah, she does at least
get that.
She does at least get that scene where she explains Renard's bullet in the brain sort of ailment. So I think that saves her from going like right down the bottom for, just crowbarring in this sort of
person with a ridiculous name.
Yes. Where would you put her?
For me, if we did say that she only had that scene looking at his shoulder in, it'd definitely be barely bearable or positively shocking. But I think because we get that scene where she is explaining Renard's medical issue, she's probably more suited maybe to Kiss Bang Average.
Yeah.
What would you say?
I think she goes there probably. I do enjoy that little snide remark from Moneypenny about the job in hand. Next up we have Tobias Menzies as Villiers in Casino Royale, who is basically a Moneypenny type character, an assistant to carry her stuff and to tell her where Bond is at any given time. I think purposefully not given much to do or much character development. It seems quite a deliberate choice to strip back those elements, that Moneypenny's not there, Q's not there, all the gadgets are gone, and I think this is a deliberate effort to kind of maintain focus on M and Bond. So I think he's undeveloped, but I think that's the point. He would have probably become more developed if they'd chosen to keep him on. He might have filled the same role Tanner does in later movies, but I don't know that you can really say he goes anywhere but kiss, bang average, can you?
Yeah, I'd put him in there. I mean, he gets little scenes that shows he's a bit inept in some ways. So sometimes he'll throw up when he sees a dead body, or when he puts Bond on hold when he tries to get in touch with M.
Yeah.
He's still got a lot to learn. So you do have that side of his character that you do get to see.
I do like when he puts Bond on hold. It sort of shows the sort of bureaucracy of it all, and Bond's frustration with dealing with the system, and I think he belongs there.
Yeah, I'm happy with him there.
So next up we have Rory Kinnear as Tanner, the most recent incarnation, who started his role in Quantum of Solace and has been there ever since.
Yeah, he gets better as the films have gone on. Tanner, for me, in Quantum of Solace, kind of is very similar to Villiers, actually. That sort of doing everything by the book, sort of attitude, but he gets to break away from that.
He's got a couple of funny kind of quips, or little retorts here and there, like not in the mood kind of thing. But he doesn't do anything in that film to suggest that he's going to come back and play a bigger part. He doesn't distinguish himself. You're right, but I think he does, and I think maybe the turning point for me was in Skyfall, when he realizes that Mallory is not the bad guy they thought he was, and it looks like he's caught them in the act of tracking Bond, and he tells them to keep going. That little look he gives to Q, that like kind of newfound respect, and I think at that point we just thought, he's human with his Heineken and his unbuttoned shirt, and since then I've really liked him. I want to see more of him. I think I'd put him maybe in great. How do you think he compares to Michael Kitchen?
Michael Kitchen, I think, still has more warmth than Rory Kinnear, whereas Rory Kinnear's character still has that very much professionalism that you'd expect the Chief of Staff to have.
Let's put them side by side for now, even though we're not really doing a strict ranking, but let's put that there as a sort of suggestion that they are both good interpretations. Okay, next up we have Eve Moneypenny, as played by Naomi Harris in Skyfall, Spectre, and No Time to Die, I'm sure.
I don't really know what to say about this Moneypenny, because it's a very different incarnation of Moneypenny.
Yes.
It makes sense for her character in Skyfall in terms of what she does in that film. She is relevant to what happens within that. However, I feel like from here on in, is she being shoehorned in because it's Miss Moneypenny?
Well, that's it. I honestly don't think that Daniel Craig's Bond needed a Moneypenny. There's enough characters surrounding him that they sort of seem to begin his tenure with the intention of avoiding those elements, and carving a new path, a more modern path with the more modern looking buildings and the stripped down staff and less gags and gimmicks and stuff, and they've gradually just almost sort of chickened out and brought them back in, and it feels a little bit like that. I think it feels a little bit more like kind of a fan service sort of thing. You could have given it any other name and it would be fine. I just don't think she needed to be Moneypenny. She would be a great Moneypenny, I think, but I don't think Daniel Craig's Bond needed that.
No.
And the way her name is revealed is kind of a bit clunky. It's hard to believe that he didn't know what her name was until then. Where would you put her, say, compared to Caroline Bliss?
I'd put Naomi Harris as above Caroline Bliss.
Naomi Harris or Samantha Bond?
Well, that's the question, especially when you consider that Samantha Bond was the Moneypenny that I grew up with during the Pierce Brosnan era.
I think it just comes down to both our sensibilities of just thinking, great actress, well acted, very useful character, very helpful, very able.
Yeah.
But I just don't see Moneypenny because she's not doing the role that you'd expect Moneypenny to do.
Yeah.
Or having the relationship you'd expect from her. I would put her probably somewhere around there.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
Next up we have Gareth Mallory, aka M, as played by Ralph Fiennes from Skyfall and Spectre and No Time to Die.
I really like Ralph Fiennes as M. I think he brings a very similar sort of character that we see of M in the form of Bernard Lee. He has that authority, yet we also see a caring side to M as well. So those two qualities, I think, is what makes a good M. And I think Ralph Fiennes brings that with his...
It's almost a shame that it took until Skyfall for him to be introduced, because my personal hopes after Daniel Craig's ended his run is that they will actually reboot again, because Daniel Craig's kind of films seem like they've written themselves into such a corner with his character backstory that it kind of needs to be reset in order for someone else to take over it. And then I hope that they do what they've always done pre-Daniel Craig, which was just to keep all the supporting characters and recast the main role as they need to. So it is a shame. It is a shame that because of my wish for that to happen, I also want to see Ralph Fiennes replaced when Daniel Craig is.
Yeah, that's the only downside, really. I'd like to see more of Ralph Fiennes as much as I can.
Ralph Fiennes should have been M from the beginning. Judi Dench should have never been M in Daniel Craig's films. There, I said it.
Get ready for the backlash, the Judy backlash.
He is a great M. He's been in one good film and one bad one, but he's been good in both of them. Where do we put him?
I'd put him in great.
I would put him about there.
Yeah, I'm happy with that.
And next up we have Ben Whishaw as Q from Skyfall, Spectre and No Time to Die.
Yeah, so I think for Daniel Craig's era, I think he's the right Q. I think he could have gone down the path of the John Cleese, Desmond Llewellyn sort of older Q, but I think the fact that they've gone for a younger actor compared to Daniel Craig's Bond, I think it's something that really does work. And I think he is the right Q for the right time.
Yeah, I agree. I remember seeing like fan cast ideas before they announced that Ben Whishaw was going to be Q, and they were unanimously like some old white guy, you know, Ian McKellen or whatever it might be. You know, they're all the same mold that fans were suggesting, and there was kind of a bit of upset when it was announced that this sort of 30-something would be playing the role, but it works. It absolutely works. And you know, as bad a film as Spectre is at places, Ben Whishaw is a standout part in that film. He's having a lot of fun, and he's
definitely one of the highlights.
He's doing some good stuff. He's above John Cleese for me, so that puts him in great, really. And I would probably put him around about, there.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. Yeah.
Looking at that now, does any of that seem out of place to you?
No, I'm happy with that. I was just unsure of John Cleese's role, but I think pretty good is good.
You want to put him up there?
No, I think you're right. I think he was right in the right place. I think sometimes we think pretty good is a negative thing, but it's not. Everything seems right to me.
So from Desmond Llewellyn as Q up the top, right down to poor old Penelope Smallbone. That is our tier list of the MI6 staff.
That's something I can be happy with, and let us know if we've missed anything off as well, because I'm sure we have. There'll probably be someone saying that why we included this character but not another character.
Right. Okay. Well, that is all. We will speak to you all on the next episode, and until then,
don't forget to spread that jam.
Spread that jam, everyone. Take care.
Cheerio.